Really nothing.
Should I leave the hair down or should I steal this hair elastic?
That's your call. You can see yourself.
Yeah, see, I don't like looking at myself.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Music Makes Sense, the podcast that talks about why music is easy and why life isn't. Today, my guest is probably one of the men I respect most in the world. He is the dude who brought me back up to my hometown. He is Mr. Fantastic. He is Long Hair McGee, Mr. Brandon Bryson. How's it going, man?
Good. That was a big intro.
Always.
I have a... Oh, I'm crying. Fantastic. What was the question?
So, what's the EP you just released?
Oh, the plug, of course. That one, I just put out my first solo release called Riding a Wave, Riding a Lull. It's 5 songs. It's like 18 minutes long because it's 2024 and no one has an attention span anymore. That rhymed. Yeah, that's it.
That's it?
That's what it is. Let's get this out of here.
What was, why did you pick these batch of songs rather than, the other 5 we were talking about earlier?
They were just the ones that resonated at the time. I find that, like, especially with older material, if you get too far away from it, from the time of conception, I find that you kind of lose connectivity with it, and maybe you find meaning for it again later in a different way, from a different angle, whatever have you. That's a pretty Rick Rubin response. I feel a little pretentious.
Hey, I mean...
That's okay.
Aren't artists inherently pretentious?
No.
No.
I don't think all of them are.
No, why not?
I think the good ones are.
So, I think by you being pretentious, you're calling yourself a good artist.
Okay, yeah, that was a roundabout ego stroke, wasn't it?
Hey,
man, I mean, I'll take it.
If you serve me, I take them.
Yeah.
What is growing up in Nova Scotia like?
Well, here's the funny thing. I did my sort of growing up in Nova Scotia. Like those were the fun growing up years, the ones where you're not fun, but you're a ton of trouble, and your parents are just like, "Kid, what are you doing? What are you doing?" So I actually spent more time growing up in Prince Edward Island than I did in Nova Scotia. But I consider that period of time more of my growing up because I learned a lot of hard lessons when I was there. Just teenager,
What was the
things.
What was the community like back there?
That's tough, man. I only really saw family when I lived there and the friends I went to school with.
Oh, that sounds like a community.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I guess. But I wasn't very interested in community as a child. Not at all. I was more interested in, other things, just being a youth, a troubled youth, like a stereotype.
Sure.
It was kind of, I don't know. Those were the things I liked to do as a kid, so.
It seems to be that that shifted now because it seems like everyone in this community knows you and respects you and, has heard your name in conversation at least once or twice.
Really?
I think so. Everyone that I come in cahoots with, they have.
That's so weird to me, dude, because I don't look that far outside. Like I feel like a blip on the radar a lot of the time. It's. I guess when you're in your head all the time, you're in your own head. You don't think people know you. It's strange. So I don't know that. Yeah, I guess I never really thought about that. Weird.
What was coming up to Fort McMurray like, and what was the culture shock of?
It was cold.
It was cold.
That was the big one. And the lifted trucks, man. Like I came up in 2000 and 13 or 12, something like that. I was 18 when I came up here.
We can go your personal year timeline.
Yeah.
That's always easier.
Yeah. What record was I working on? Probably some garbage.
Slurp, 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 slurp.
Yeah, that and the trucks. But I came up at like the tail end of the oil boom, you know, so it was like everybody was like flaunting their money at the time. And like,
Sure.
yeah. It was,
Is that why you came up here? Was the people...
I came up here because I needed to leave Nova Scotia at the time. I was just, it wasn't anything in particular. I just kind of had outgrown that place and needed to be somewhere else, I think. And my mom was up here at the time, and my stepfather. So it just seemed logical that I'd come up here next. I wasn't really in a place where I could go out and do things by myself, financially or otherwise. So, yeah.
Do you think coming up here shifted your life for the better, for, not the better?
For the better.
For the better?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Tell me a little bit about your experience in Fort McMurray with audio teching and how you got involved with doing that.
Well, that's a tricky one. I kind of fell into it, man. I don't even think I'm that good at the job, but like I do it so much. Like, I mean, a lot like you spend a lot of time at home in front of your monitors and whatever else. That's all I do at home. Like, I'm always in the studio or like also playing video games, play a lot of video games. But yeah, I think it just came from that and like hanging out in, dive bars. Like, am I about to call tavern a dive bar? I'm sorry. I didn't mean it that way. I mean it in a good way. I like dive bars.
Oh, no, this podcast has a great relationship with taverns.
Yeah, okay, good. Good enough. Excellent. Yeah, hi, Jesse. No, I guess that was it. I just came up working with a lot of guys who were young and wanted to do art and make music and not kind of be involved in the cover band sort of thing. They just wanted to do their own thing, and I think I had a lot of fun doing that for a couple of years with Zero Loss and Allerin, and all the folks at Tavern, like Adam McLeod and the Three Fat Daddies, all those guys. A lot of those people, like, they're kind of doing dad stuff now, and I'm still like a giant teenager, which is kind of hilarious. But I mean, they're all still playing and stuff, but I know like some of them have other priorities right now, so it is what it is. But that's kind of where I came up doing it. It was just like nobody else really wanted to touch it or had the confidence to touch it, and I was just like, okay, well, let me mess around with that mixer, figure it out.
It almost seems like the community engulfed you, and Fort McMurray, like, you were kind of looking for something, and then you seen a pocket, and you're like, okay, I can go into this pocket, and it just kind of worked, because everyone, like you said, no one else really wanted to do it, and you seen yourself, like, someone's got to do it.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess they trusted me enough to do it was the big thing. At its core, the whole thing is just volume. You're scratching out EQ, you're leveling out volume with compression. It's just a cleanup job, really, more than anything else. But I guess to say I got kind of swallowed up by it or engulfed by it, I don't know. I don't really know. It just kind of happened. And then I got my hands on a bunch of gear that I bought off of my friend Andrew, and just started slinging that around town and using that for other events too, like corporate stuff and all that. Like, yeah. So, yeah. Is there like I don't know. Did I answer the question?
Yeah. I'm just making you uncomfortable right now.
Okay, well, that's okay. I'm always uncomfortable.
Getting an hour of quality conversation is tough.
It is. Yeah, I understand that. It's crazy when you watch podcasts, like good ones, and how well they can like keep that flow going. Oh. Like Joe's a master at it, and I'm not like a big Joe Rogan Experience guy, but like he's so good at that.
It's he listens,
Yeah.
and it's just rebounding the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's playing that game of tennis.
Yeah.
Okay. So you talked about learning how to tech and getting a bunch of gear and just slowly expanding your business.
Yeah.
What do you say is your worst experience doing teching, and what part of it
And
was
like setting up and like the whole thing.
the
really?
whole thing? Like what's the thing that like grinds your gears the absolute worst? I guess those are two different questions.
So what do I think is the worst about it? We get a bad sound, like a bad rig, or I'm not gonna. Okay, so yeah, it's two things. So the first one is like unmanageable noise, unmanageable sounds, like stuff that you want to sound good that just doesn't. Like it's the old mantra, garbage in, garbage out. It exists for a reason in the world of production and audio and just like studio work and live, whatever. Garbage in, garbage out. That is frustrating.
So like you're referring to like stuff wanting to sound good but not, like such as like instruments or like
Yeah, I mean, just tonally, whatever's given to me, if it doesn't sound good, chances are like 90% of the time you're not going to make it sound good.
Sure. So
You
yeah,
know?
whether that be like like literally a guitar signal, a backing track.
Yeah, it could. Backing tracks are the worst. They never sound natural. They just sound like a computer made them all the time. And then like I mean like dealing with diva talent, but like those people weed themselves out really fast because no one else wants to deal with them either. And it's very rare you run into something like that. So, I mean, musicians are notoriously pretty chill for the most part. I've never dealt with Henry Rollins though, so
That's
yeah,
true. We don't know Henry Rollins. Maybe he is a chill guy.
He scares me.
You
so.
know. I think that's kind of. I think with most scary people, they put on a front of being scary.
Yeah.
But deep down, they're really trying to protect something.
Yeah, it's funny with him. He's the guy that I remember seeing an interview with him, and he was like, "I listen to a new record every day." That's where I adopted that from. I try every day to listen to something new intentionally. Not just like turn it up in the car and answer 15 texts at the light. Like turn it up, pay attention, and yeah,
Commit your energy to that.
Yeah,
thing.
and I think that's the thing we lack a lot now. Just with our attention spans with social media and TikTok and stuff, and I mean that's why the EP was targeted at 18 minutes. Big reason, and I did it all myself. So I was like, do I really want to do 45 by myself?
That's
Insane.
That's a lot of music.
Yeah, that's death. That is bad news.
Something you mentioned to me when I first started working with you was the group isn't the largest, but word always travels. And you were referring to all of the sound techs in Alberta and the talent in Alberta and the cliques and the groups of where the community, like it's not like a New York jazz scene by any stretch, but we all have this kind of like, for better and for worse, definitely it's like this familiar unit of people of like, oh yeah, we all know we all know the guys who run the country circuit. We all know the guys doing the rock thing, and it's all like month after month we're encountering the same folks, coming back to Fort McMurray and doing the same circuits. And I just think it's like it's really interesting to have a pocket of people to where they're out there seeing all these different things and experiencing all these different people, but yet they still have a home in Fort McMurray, and they have a home in this small community. It feels very potent here.
Yeah, it's strange, isn't it? Like and to your point, like I think everybody, and I think that like globally it kind of works like that within like the arts industry or music, whatever. Especially when you have to do like so my main source of income is teching, and that fuels my ability to sit at home and like work in the studio and write songs with my project or with When April Met July or whatever have you. So like I get to know the money side of the industry a little more than a lot of people do. Like most of my friends at Tavern, for example, they're not like, you know, they're not interested in going out and playing 3 hours of covers every night because it's more of an outlet for them. Where on, I guess, like I kind of get to know both circles that way because I work with those crews too, because I like working with those crews, and I like working with the other crews too. But like that's the job, you know, like the commerce side of it is the, you know, hey, we got this familiar product. We're going to sell it to people and we're going to make our money for the night and then go home. And
everyone's going to be happy.
Yeah.
Everyone's going to be, no one's going to go home hungry.
everyone's going to shake their toes, you know, and it's like,
It's great that like we have the opportunity to do that.
it is. But yeah, it really is. And it's like, yeah, I don't know. I guess my point was that like I kind of get to know both sides of it. So knowing both sides of the industry like that, like the stuff that comes from the punk roots and that kind of DIY ethos, versus like, you know, the catered stuff where the venue can actually afford $100,000 audio system or something like that. You know, it's fun to play in all those nooks and crannies. It's
interesting that the divas, they exist in all circles. Like whether if you're getting paid for $5 playing for free, you know, getting paid for $5,000, it's.
And I think it's a little different on both sides too, though, right? Because like you see the kids who are like, or yeah, I'd say all musicians are kind of kids anyway. So you see the kids who are just like, they want to get their thing right. And that's the difference, you know, like that's the difference between the people who are playing in the dirt and the people who are playing for the money. Sure, the people who are playing for their money, they care too, but like it's like a different kind of care.
Absolutely.
Like there's an experimentalism, like you're when you're dealing with the guys who are coming out of the dirt with new stuff, growing new flowers. You know, it's they're trying to achieve something that hasn't been done before, or maybe it's just, you know, it's something different. Whereas like I feel like there's more of a standard blueprint when you're dealing with the more money side of the industry. Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like I'm going on a Steve Albini here, but
no, everything you're saying is fairly rational.
Yeah,
it's the way I'm interpreting it is it's kind of like we need people to be growing new flowers, but we also need people you know, building the roots.
Yeah.
And without those roots of, you know, more traditional styles of music, more traditional, like go out, play 350s. Without that, you don't have a lot of people even just going to see music in the first place. And I think, you know, the goal should just be getting people out to see music, whether it be, you know, someone doing a 350 or someone going out there for playing for, you know, drink tickets.
Yeah, that's fair.
And
I understand. I get where you're coming from there. Do you think that's changed a lot though, the last like 30, 40 years?
Absolutely. I think price gouging from tickets has made things almost impossible to go to, and I think it's there's a big diversity between what people expect music to cost and what music actually does cost.
Yeah.
Because for the past, I mean, musicians are probably some of the people who get boned the worst and the fastest out of, you know, people, because it's, you know, how many times has someone just written a song and someone be like, hey, I like that song, here's $50, and then next thing you know, there you go, that's a number one hit. Or, you know, hey boys, you know, play 4 hours, haul all your gear for, you know, 3 hours, and, you know, we'll give you 2 drink tickets and $20.
Yeah, there's a lot of that going around, dude. And I think it particularly affects the creative side of the industry, because guys get in this routine, especially within Alberta. And I mean, I'm not trying to say anything's right or wrong, but I think it is detrimental to the creative side of the arts and music industry. It really is, because you're incentivizing people to learn, you know, 30, 40-year-old songs to make a paycheck. And that's the only way they're getting paid. So nobody's coming out and, like, you know, doing their own thing. No one's really becoming the next Nirvana, or they're not getting that outlet because nobody values it. And even Spotify and streaming, the same thing. Like, what are you making on a stream on Spotify? You have to pass 5,000 streams first before you can even make any money. And then you're getting something like 0.00001 on a penny for a stream. It's brutal. But to my point, I don't even know where I was going with that. But it was like, I think it's kind of a scary place for the arts industry right now because everything is so commerce based, and it's even affecting the way that people are. I keep talking here instead of here.
That's fine.
I should know better, dude. I really should. What do I do? Like,
Dude,
what do
it's
I do for a living?
That's why I got Post.
Yeah, but yeah, it's very commerce oriented, and it's
Even
serious.
like the way you phrased learning 40 to 50-year-old songs for commerce. If you replaced the for commerce for love of music, it would be such a different situation.
And I think that's the distinction. Like, I think I could name one or two bands off the top of my head that I know that really do it like that. But I could probably name more than one or two. But my point is I think there are a lot of people who kind of grew bitter as a result of this. You know, like they've been playing the same set 345s every weekend, and they haven't changed it up in 5 years because they're like, what's the point? You know, like, and that sucks. That is sad.
At that
dude.
point,
like,
that really is a job. That's
yeah. It's like, why did you do this in the first place? It wasn't for that. But then, I mean, you get pigeonholed by responsibilities and commerce, and you know, having to pay for that child that you have, and you know, like, this is how you make the check. So be it. And that's just part of responsibility, I guess. But it all kind of pigeonholes together, you know, all kind of.
And that goes back to the idea that musicians just kind of, they don't really have it easy, like, because it's hard to define the value of what music even is, because you know, if like going to a big stage show with elaborate dancers and choreographed moves and pyrotechnics, that's a completely different thing than going to an open mic that has, you know, two old amps and not even, you know, barely a PA. But the effect that you could have a greater emotional effect at that $20 gig than you would ever have at that the big stadium show. And that's what really amazes me about music, is the ability to, it's not about money. Like, you can pump millions of dollars into a thing, and it's not going to recreate that baseline human connection that just being, you know, whatever good music does.
Yeah. And I mean, yeah, that's such a good point. I mean, I think you're absolutely right. But I think maybe there might be a little more disconnect in those bigger rooms. But I think that when it comes to arts and stuff, well, arts in general, music, I'll say music because this is the Music Makes Sense podcast. If it touches one person in the room, I think you've done your job. You know, it's kind of what I'm getting at.
What if that one person's yourself?
That's fine.
That's
Who'd
fine.
you start doing it for in the first place, man?
That's true. The first listener is you.
Yeah. And like, one of my favorite things in the world, I remember there's this like Kanye West interview, and someone like, I don't know, something about like he was riding down the street somewhere in like LA or wherever the heck he lives. Look at that. I said heck instead of, I'm good at this. Anyway, Kanye West, he does this, he'll like ride around in his car and he's listening to his own music. And people are like, who listens to their own music? And like, why are you writing music if you don't like the sound of your own music? Like,
absolutely.
Like, what are you doing? You know, like,
that really echoes the thing you said about the dudes playing the rooms, the 345s, who are just like not really doing anything different and changing it up. It's like, what are you doing this for? Like, if you're not enjoying it, you know, do it.
But some of them do really enjoy it. Like, they really do. And one of the other things I think that comes with that territory as being like one of those people that kind of steps into that role. I had two people actually say this to me in the last couple of years that play that circuit. and do that, they were like, man, I just don't have anything to say. And like, okay,
the awareness
You know?
that an artist has to have
Yeah.
to be able to think that, or like, do you think that's, wow, okay, could that be, how much contentness is in that statement and how much insecurity could be in that statement?
I think in a lot of instances it could be both, but at least one of those two people that have said that to me are very content.
Sure.
Like it's in their face, in their eyes. Like that person goes to sleep at night without a problem, single issue.
We're assuming, we're assuming,
I'm assuming,
but we can't
what?
verify this
I
information.
didn't name drop either of them, so
Yep.
they could think I'm talking about the other guy or whatever.
Slander's
If they ever saw us.
only slander if it's written.
Well, it's not slander. It's just, speculation. I just said the guy sleeps well at night. That must be nice, okay? Like,
Sure, yeah, sleeping at, yeah. As artists, it doesn't really happen.
I think it happens to some. The two guys and the contentness of one. I think some people would experience the insecurity, though. Like, I know guys who write and they don't show nobody anything. I mean, I do that sometimes. But I like, it's like flexing a muscle. You just got to keep digging it up.
There's this Rick Rubin quote where he was talking about the pitfalls that artists fall into when they're trying to release their art. And I think number one and number two, it's right at the top. It's one of the biggest ones. It's failure to just share. And, the not having the whatever that thing inside of you that is, to be able to just get it out and just release it. You would work on it for 6 years of your life, have a literal masterpiece on your hard drive, but just there's something in you that just you can't release it. And it begs to question how many masterpieces just got lost to time and to obscurity because the artist didn't feel secure enough to release it.
Yeah, I think for a lot of people that's just mostly a therapy session, man. Like I treat it all out like that when I'm working on stuff. It's like it's for me first, and it's about. I think they still get it out of them, and I think that's the important thing for people who do that. Cause it'll gnaw at you, dude, like forever. And I mean, I stuck, I'm not even going to say how long I left that EP that I just released on my hard drives, because it's embarrassing. But it's, I don't know. I guess you just kind of decide that the time is the time.
All right, everyone. After this short break, we're going to get back and we're going to talk about more stuff with Brandon Bryson.
It's not even the relationships that are the problem. It's like, okay, I like music. Well, I like writing music because it gives me a place to put thoughts in a lot of ways. Not just thoughts, but feelings and just other stuff. Some stuff comes from like out there, and then some stuff comes from like here. You know what I mean by that?
Yes,
Maybe?
absolutely. Yeah.
So it's like when you're writing from here instead of like there, you're only drawing from your own experiences and your own self, I guess. And I think sometimes it can be uncomfortable to let those things out in front of other people. And I think that's a big part of the reason why some people don't put out records like we were talking about earlier, like those masterpieces that you'll never hear. Maybe it could be damaging to someone they love because of this particular instance in that song or whatever have you. So I think that makes it tough. And there's like...
So do you find like it's hard to share, like, if I'm hearing this right, music is the ultimate way, like it's the ultimate way you can express yourself and how you feel.
I think
and
so.
And you feel kind of insecure sharing that because you're afraid of how other people are going to react to it.
Yeah, and what they might perceive it to be.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's real life people.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's like, I mean, there's countless instances of that within the arts and the music industry, where you look back and like stuff like that would like tear people in bands apart sometimes. And acts. I mean, a great example would be like look at Fleetwood Mac.
Yeah.
Rumors, right?
But also, you can't deny that was some of the best art.
And that's the thing, right? So it's like, in order to be vulnerable, you kind of just gotta really put the guts on the table, you know? And that's what people are gonna connect with the most anyway, you know? So it's, and I don't mean that it always has to be like this negative feeling associated, but like, there's a certain uncomfortableness that comes with like, you know, giving off a happier vibe or like a more chilling thing when it comes to music, because, you know, some people are going to look at that and be like, oh, that's it's so cheesy.
Sure.
Like, bro, I'm sorry that guy had a good day. Like, what? You know?
Do you think the culture climate has a lot to do with that? Like, say, like the example that comes to my mind is in the 80s, hair metal, when that was really big. It was just like, hey, yeah, like, it wasn't really like deep, dark, real topics. The music was really kind of superficial, about partying, about, you know, having a good time. And then grunge came along, and that was kind of the antithesis of that. And that was, hey, this is really real and all that. And then everyone's seen hair metal as cheesy.
Yeah.
But then in the 2000s, when like bubblegum pop came around, people kind of looked at bubblegum pop and was like, oh yeah, we're having a good time. And then they looked at grunge and was like, why is everything so moody?
Yeah.
Like, come on, like let up a little bit.
Yeah.
So like, how much do you think like the culture climate has to do with that idea of like people liking real raw things, or people being like, hey dude, it's good to just chill out?
I think it's cyclical, you know, like it really is. I think you've said that to me before, actually, and I was kind of glad that you noticed it too, because I mean, you can't have happy without sad, and you can't have sad without happy. You know, like if there's only the one, what else is there? Is it really? I'm getting a little bit Notre Dame-ish about this now, but you know, it's, I don't even know if that would be the right name to use, but whatever. It's you know, it's like being stuck on a wavelength. Does it? If you only feel one thing, is it that thing, or is it just? It's a hard thing to explain with words.
It's almost as if comparison confirms the feeling, or because without a comparison, then you have no other.
Yes.
You have no other experience of what.
That's exactly what I'm
like.
getting at. It is exactly like that. Thank you. Very eloquently put. Very eloquently put. But yeah, I mean, what else? Like, the other hard thing is just like getting it done sometimes.
Procrastination.
Yeah,
that's always
I think
a tough
everybody
one.
deals with that, you know.
Yep.
But it's
what aspects specifically about procrastination, or do you struggle with?
I get overwhelmed.
You get overwhelmed?
That's what I do. I get like, well, I mean, I'll work on 3 or 4 records at the same time, and then it takes me 3 years to get one of them out.
Sure, instead of just consolidating your effort into one. And
yeah, and I think that is also a bit of a product of the time in which we're alive. You look back in the 40s and 50s, or, you know, perhaps earlier, there wasn't so much of the economic climate wasn't the same. So it was like, you know, you could get a roof over your head and no one complained that you weren't paying the bills. You're out there playing guitar every night in a pub, bringing home a couple bucks for food, and that was just what you did. But now, like, everything is so, you know, driven by capitalism and consumerism that it's like, you can't just own a hut in the woods and go there when you're done your gig. You know, you have to pay property taxes and this and that. So it's...
Do you feel that anxiety, that's the anxiety that makes you start more things than you can finish?
I think what I'm trying to say is like that, the way people used to do that is so different from what we have now, because most people are forced to work 40 hours a week. I'm fortunate enough that I make most of my money and you know, keep myself alive by doing things I love to do and I want to do. If I don't want to do it, I'm probably not going to do it.
Sure.
And not everybody has that leniency in their life. So you end up with guys who are working 40 hours a week. Do they really have time to go and spend 20 hours in a studio and really bang things out on the spot?
Get into that flow state?
Yeah, they don't.
No.
And that's just a part of the reality we live in. And yeah, it gets tough. That's when you start getting fragmented, and like when it starts to, you lose that initial perspective very quickly when you do 10 to 15 different things in the run of a week. You know, you can't really be there. And I think that's very hard. And I think that's a big reason why, you know, you look at some artists and some musicians making records and stuff like that, and like they'll go out. You might know who I'm talking about here. Well, I'm not even gonna name drop again, but they'll go to like a shack somewhere, cut off from everybody, and just do the record there, and they get it done in a month.
Yeah.
You want to know why? Because there's nothing distracting them, dude.
They're getting
it done.
It's
like.
But also, you can't deny that idea is probably impossible. Like, just not even like logistically, but like mentally, like really committing yourself to one thing for 30 days. I think
that's the way we find the big stuff, though. That's when we really get in there. I did that when I did that first EP that I just put out. Like it was during COVID. So I just told people how long it's been on my hard drive.
I'm not even gonna say how long I left that EP that I just released.
Whoops. I mean, I spent 3 months staying up till 5 a.m, and then I spent like a month, you know, messing with the mix, being the nutcase about it, and then I shelved it for an indefinite amount of time. Because I was like, you know, COVID was a weird time for a lot of people too, man. Like, I needed somewhere to put something.
It's interesting that our first instinct is to shelve it, though, not release it.
Yeah, I was uncomfortable with it. I really was. Like, the person that developed within those circumstances of really burying yourself in it, I wanted nothing to do with anybody. Like, I would barely pick up my phone. I wasn't doing anything at work. I was just deadpan focused, tunnel vision. And that can be really hard for people to get along with. Like, I understand why a lot of people who work in the higher levels of this don't really get tethered to anything. Socially, or, you know, martially, because they need that. They need that space in their life to really let those ideas flounder and flourish.
Yeah.
Not flounder. Flounder is what happens when you don't have the space. But yeah, so that's another tough one. Like, if I could, I'd lock myself in a room for the next 3 months. So
you say you have some pretty big antisocial tendencies.
Yeah, but I like being around people too.
The yin and yang.
Yeah, man. I get sick of people really quick.
Sure. But you need people to write songs and to have experiences.
Yeah. And new faces, new places, you know? Sitting in your basement, what are you going to write about? The four walls again?
That's so true.
Yeah, it's like, oh, the walls are white. I've seen these for a week. Can I clock it out?
If you want.
All right, I'm going to try it.
That's your camera.
That's my camera.
That's
I keep looking at your camera.
Yeah,
Did you notice that? I've been doing that all day.
Everyone does.
All right, folks. That was Music Makes Sense with your host, Josh Weber, and I am Brandon Bryson, his guest today. Thanks for watching. That's all I got.
Good night.